Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to listen to my speech today. My name is Ghebriela Araya. I'll be talking to you about effects of smoking abstinence on the subjective effects of caffeine. How I got interested in this topic was that one day at work we were very slow and we didn't have any patients. So one of the doctors he came by and we were just talking a lot. And one of the things he was telling me about was that how in the past, like if patients came up and they had some kind of issues, like they didn't know what was going on with them or they couldn't figure it out, they would pull up the cigarette and they would light it up and be like, hey, let's figure this out. So one of the patients that came by to see this doctor was he really had to quit smoking. That's what they came up with. And he couldn't tell him quit smoking though, because it would be hypocritical for him to say that when he was a smoker. So he told him, hey, listen, if I quit, you have to quit. So they decided to quit at that same time. So the doctor was a heavy caffeine drinker as well. So he was telling me about how when he stopped smoking, how the withdrawal symptoms and all the things that happened. And he came across this research which I looked into, and I will tell you the details at the end of what he came up with or what he ended up doing for his. So when people are in the process of quitting smoking, they shouldn't change their caffeine intake, even though once you stop smoking, your caffeine level goes up, even though you're not drinking more caffeine. So this study was done by Brown, Jacob, Wilson, Bennett in 1998 that they said that they should reduce their caffeine intake, which was actually this research proves them wrong. And I'm going to tell you how, but first let's look at what they had the requirements for their participants. So in the newspaper ad, they had 18 to 60 years old age. They had to be 18 to 60-year-old. They had to smoke more than 10 cigarettes per day. They had to use caffeine on a daily basis. They couldn't be abusing drug or have psychiatric or drug abuse or alcohol in the past year. And they can't be using psychoactive medication or illicit drugs. And they can't be attempting to change eating or exercising patterns, and no medical contraindication to use caffeine. Mm, and they couldn't be pregnant or breastfeeding. So what they did was the participants, they had 21 participants, but out of them only 14 were um, eligible because some of them they either had withdrawal issues or they were disqualified for not following rules. And then as you can see, there were other that had smoked like average of 23 cigarettes per day and all that. And then the mean Fagerstorm test for nicotine dependence score was 6.7, and that was the moderate dependence. So the methods that they used was the ABABA method. Let's look at the table actually ahead of time. So the 1 week will be the smoking abstinence design. So during their abstinence week, they couldn't have any caffeine, alcohol, or nicotine from Sunday 11 p.m. until the end of session on Thursday. And then on smoking week, no caffeine overnight prior to each test session. And then on test sessions, they couldn't smoke anything at all so that it didn't affect it. So what they had them do was, if it was the smoking week, they would have them smoke one cigarette right before the test session began. And the tests were done every half an hour for 10 to 15 minutes. So as we can see, like they had the different caffeine level that they did, like the 200 milligrams on the first day when they were abstinent for 36 to 84 hours. And then they let them smoke and they gave them the 400 and 200 milligrams to see how that affected. And they didn't give them any caffeine, they just let them be deprived, and then they made them smoke with no caffeine. And they did the 400. So they did so many different things to see how that worked. And so the most common withdrawal symptoms that they had was the craving for tobacco, irritation, anger, appetite, weight gain, and all that's listed. And this was like a research that I just did to show you guys like what the withdrawal symptoms were like. Um, so the results, what they came up with was actually abstinence from smoking had anger, confusion, depression, tension, and hunger. And this was very like it increased very highly when they were abstained from smoking. And the p-value told us that the error wasn't because of the design or the research or the participation. It was the actual record, because the p-value is between 0 to 1, and then if it's closer to 0, that means that there was less likely that the error happened within the research participants or the research itself. And so when they had caffeine, they had a decrease in headache, drowsiness, fatigue, and the only thing that was related to smoking with tobacco, like caffeine and tobacco symptoms that they found, was the desire for cigarettes. And that actually was when they did some uh, counter like error checking and all that, and they fixed the error that they found within the research. The numbers were meaningless. So that meant like it didn't there was no relationship between the caffeine. Yeah, your caffeine intake went really high up, but it had nothing to do with the smoking. I know that the smoking kind of suppresses the caffeine, but when it was during the withdrawal symptoms, like it didn't affect it much. Actually, the affection was just a little bit, and then the withdrawal symptoms were like 3 to 5 days. So after that, like it was a couple of days at the beginning that they would experience this. Over the long run, know that it had nothing. But if they were gonna quit, like, and cut their drinking, however, it would be like two different withdrawals. Like, hey, I'm not taking caffeine and I'm not taking smoking that my body is used to, because the caffeine was already in your body. It was just like your body was getting rid of it fast, and the smoking was getting rid of, helping it to get rid of it fast. And minimizing the error for this research, like they design was within the participants, and then there was a wide range of abstinence duration and dose ranges, and there was a wide range of subjective effect measures in the biochemical verification of abstinence, for example. So like if they weren't supposed to be smoking, they had the carbon monoxide testing done on them. If they weren't supposed to be drinking caffeine, they had like the saliva test for their caffeine as well. So in conclusion, they say that changing caffeine intake during smoking cessation does not change withdrawal symptomatology. So that was studied by Swanson in 1994, and this kind of confirms it as well. And the caffeine reduction and induced withdrawal symptoms of headache, fatigue, and drowsiness. So that would make it even worse. And as a research that was done before, they say that for human beings, it is kind of impossible to get rid of multiple habits at the same time. Like you need to withdraw one, like get rid of one habit, replace it with a good one, and then get rid of the other one and replace it with a good one. Because if you try to get rid of multiple ones, like two of them, like smoking and caffeine, let's say, it would be impossible. It would be very difficult, and not only difficult, but it would be very, very impossible. And there was a study done for it in like 1995. And that's how they discovered that as well. So basically, that's all they decided. And the doctor, as I was talking to him, he told me that the first night he quit smoking, at night he was so restless. He got up and he's like, "What's going on with me?" And he discovered that his caffeine level was very, very high. And he came across this research when he was doing like he researched what's going on, and he came across this and he's like, it made sense. But he didn't end up cutting the caffeine because after a couple of days it went away and his body adjusted to it. So there's another life proof that you shouldn't cut your caffeine, because when he tried that, he had so many headaches and all that too. So thank you for listening. This concludes my speech for today, and here's my bibliography. And if you have any questions, I can take them at this point. Thank you for listening.